and this is What Effie Reads.
I was lost, but you helped me find my way. Tainted by a desire, 'cause I was scared to face the truth. You pulled me out from my anxiety.
In today's video, I'm going to be picking out some books that are on my physical unread TBR, and I'm basically going to be setting a timer on them. This is a concept that I've seen around. I think it possibly originated from Becca at Becca and the Books. She was the first creator that I saw doing this, but I know that quite a few creators do this kind of video. In case you're not familiar with this concept, you pick out books from your shelves that you just find yourself never gravitating towards, and they tend to be books that you probably want to unhaul but need that little extra push, or perhaps they're books that you just feel like you can't unhaul until you've read, and it helps give you that push towards unhauling them, whether that means reading them first or not. Now this video is going to essentially be comprised of two lists. The first one being the books that I set out in my These Books Will Self-Destruct in 12 Months last May, and the second one is going to be a fresh set of books. So the books that I set on a timer last May, I've actually decided to give them a little bit longer. And that's because at the end of 2022, I want to go through my whole list and reflect. And it just feels like it works better for me if I have one list that expires in December rather than having one in May and then one in December. So I will go through the books that were on the list last May. I'm not going to give blurbs. I will link up in the cards the original video that I made. I will give blurbs for the new books, and I will also pop chapters in this video. So if you want to skip ahead and just look at what books I'm adding to the list this year, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to start off by listing the books that were on the list that I haven't gotten to yet, so I'm going to roll over until December. We've got The Girl Who Lied by Sue Fortin, Never Evers by Tom Ellen and Lucy Iverson, The School of Good and Evil by Samani Chenani, Mrs. De Winter by Susan Hill, 13 Little Blue Envelopes by Maureen Johnson, The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North, Girl Unknown by Karen Perry, Angel Time by Anne Rice, The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, Black Whiskers, The River Pirate by John Williamson, and Rogue by Rachel Vincent. Now the three books that I have made a decision on, we've got Someone We Know by Shari Lapina. I read this book, I hated it, I am unhauling it, and at this point I think that as much as I might be tempted to pick up more books from this author, I think Shari Lapina just isn't the author for me. We've got With Malice by Eileen Cook. I read this book, it was okay, I didn't have any strong feelings about it, so I'm going to be unhauling it. And the final book I have actually already unhauled, and it is Watching You by Arnie Dahl. It was a book that when I put on the list, I was already very much on the fence about. I did not read it, and I think what clarified my lack of desire to want to read it was that back in August, my TBR game gave me the option of either listening to a 60+ hour audiobook or reading that 400-page book, and I picked the 60-hour audiobook, so that just immediately went on the unhaul pile. And now we're on to this year's picks for books that will self-destruct. I've decided that I'm going to be reviewing these books in December. So rather than the usual 12 months, these books are going to self-destruct in roughly 11 months. So first up, we've got Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. Essentially, it seems to be witches on two different sides that team up to try and overthrow the corrupt powers in charge. This beautiful edition is the Fairy Loot edition, and I was very excited to read it. However, since it's come out, I've literally only heard bad things about it, so I'm a little bit less than excited to read it. We've got The Last Family in England by Matt Haig. This book seems to have a dog as the protagonist, and it talks about how the dog has to break his sacred pact as a Labrador to try and save the family. It does sound really interesting, but I had such a visceral response to the Midnight Library that I'm really scared to pick up anything else from Matt Haig. Next up, we've got Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, and this is also going to extend to the other two books in the series and also Book of Dust, La Belle Sauvage. I actually don't know that much about this series. I think it's some, like, you've got like animal familiars and there's some kind of magic in it. But this is a series that I've tried time and time and time again to pick up. So essentially, this is me giving this series a last chance before I just unhaul it and give up. Next up, we've got Wool by Hugh Howey. The blurb is quite vague, but it seems to be a fairly standard dystopia. This is a book that I picked up because I heard really amazing things about it. But it's a little bit like Northern Lights in that I've put it on several like TBRs and like wanted to read it multiple times and never managed. However, the difference with this book is I haven't ever started it. It is a book that I'm excited about, but given how many times I've just not opened it, I'm hoping this will give me the kick to actually give it a try. Next up, we have Modern Nature by Derek Jarman. It seems to be an autobiography that like has a big influence with gardening. I don't know. This book doesn't particularly appeal to me, but it did come from Queer Book Box. That subscription box has had some real gems in it. And basically, as a result of Queer Book Box, I picked up two of my favourite books last year that I wouldn't necessarily have gravitated towards otherwise. So I am very interested to pick this up, and I'm hoping that it's going to be another one of those almost hidden gems. Next up, we've got A Rising Man by Abir Mukherjee. I got this back when Goodreads still allowed international entrants to their giveaways. So I got this and I got the sequel, which annoyingly is hardcover, so they don't match, which is quite frustrating. I very occasionally see someone talking about it or just a passing mention, and it is a book that potentially would be of interest to me, but I haven't picked it up, and I've had it for years and years now. Looking at the blurb, it seems to be a crime novel where a man is murdered in India and there's a note left with him saying that the British need to get out of India or else, which sounds really interesting, but also I am a little bit funny about crime. I find it a really difficult genre to enjoy now. So I'm hoping I do enjoy it, especially as it seems to be maybe not two white police officers teaming up. I don't know. This is probably one of those books that I'm either gonna love or hate, but at least this will give me the kick to find out. Next up, we've got Red Dirt by E.M. Reapy. This book came in a box of stories that the awesome Shannon bought for me. She's always linked in the description, so please do check her out. When I read the blurb, it does sound like this is going to be right up my street, and it does sound really interesting. But it's one of those books that sits on my shelf and I just never find myself reaching for. So I guess this is kind of me trying to prioritize it, but I don't know if that will work. The blurb is really short and sweet, so I will just read it to you. Hopper, out of his head on acid, is left for dead in the outback. Fiona has fled an abusive relationship that shattered her self-respect. Merce's family lost a fortune when the Celtic Tiger collapsed. In Australia's vast promised land, these three young people try to escape their past. So it does sound like something that would appeal to me, but as I say, I just never reach for it. My Beautiful Struggle by Jordan Bone. This is kind of the same as the previous entry in that I think it's something that I'm going to really enjoy, but I need a kick to actually pick it up. I think it's just a fairly standard autobiography about a woman who was in a car accident and now has to use a wheelchair. Hopefully I will enjoy it. It's one that I've had on my shelves for a long time. The penultimate book we've got on my list is The Leaving by Tara Altebrando. This was also given to me by the wonderful Shannon. And again, it's one of those that it's on this list because I find myself never reaching for it, but I probably will really enjoy it. I believe she's read this book and also thinks I'm going to love it. So hopefully this will be the kick that I need. This says 6 5-year-olds go missing without a trace, and 11 years later, 5 of them come back with no memory of where they've been, who took them, or why. So it does sound like it could be a really good twisty-turny thriller. And the final book that I've got on my list is 6-4 by Hideo Yokoyama. And this book I've talked about before. It's one that this particular edition has left me feeling really conflicted. This is an ex-library copy, which I thought brilliant. I have no problem with ex-library copies. I actually like the plastic covers that ex-library copies often have. And then it arrived and I am never buying an ex-library copy from the internet again, as this came from a prison. And not only did it come from a prison, it came from a prison for sex offenders, which makes me really uncomfortable to have on my shelves. So whether I like this book or not, this particular copy is getting unhauled at the end of the year. If I like it, I will pick up another copy, but I have no desire to physically keep this. And I don't think it's ever made its way onto my shelves because we don't want that kind of energy on these shelves. From what I can tell from the blurb, it's about a investigation into a missing child that goes incredibly wrong, and the police are at fault for it going wrong. So again, it sounds like a thriller. It sounds really twisty-turny, and I am hoping that I enjoy it. I just am very sad that this edition is this edition. So those are all of the books that will self-destruct in 11 months. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought of them, and until next time, bye! Oh, bye!